Isn't it already pretty expensive just trying to be a musician? Not talking about the money that you don't make from streaming or just from trying to make music in general, but just the cost to get into making music. You have to have some sort of computer, you have to have a keyboard, software, or some sort of MIDI controller, and it's about to get a bit more expensive. Hey everyone, it's me, lo-fi musician and producer, Blue Sirens, and today I want to talk to you about why things are going to get expensive as a musician in the coming months. Now, before we dive into what's going to be costing you a lot more and hopefully how you can maybe save some costs, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So, why are things going to get more expensive? Well, if you haven't heard, there's going to be a whole bunch of tariffs placed on things that are going to come from other countries, and specifically China. And not every MIDI keyboard or musical instrument is made in China, but a decent amount of them are. And one of the favorite brands of electronic musicians or just people making music with their computer is Novation. And Novation, while they are a UK-based company, they do a lot of manufacturing in China. So anything going out of China into the US is going to be a lot of tariffs placed on them soon. So it's going to have a pretty big impact because right now you can go to Amazon and you can get the fourth version of the Launchpad keyboard for about $120. But in a couple months, maybe even sooner than that, it's going to probably end up being around 150, 160, maybe even 170, depending on taxes and other things like that. So if you are thinking about getting some gear or picking something up or doing a refresh, now is going to be the time to do it because 50, 60 bucks more or 40, whatever it is, more that you have to take out of your pocket for the same thing is less money that you can put towards marketing your music, getting other equipment, or just using it to live life and get some sort of inspiration. So if you've been eyeing a piece of gear, look up where it's made, if there's going to be some sort of tariff placed on it so that you can try and get that gear before the prices go up. Now, how is this going to impact the entire, music industry? Well, if gear just gets more expensive, then you're going to find it harder to go to places like Guitar Center or a local music shop and try things out, demo things out. I often like going to Guitar Center and just getting a feel for different things, trying out how that instrument's going to be before I buy it. And if it's something I'm going to buy and keep in my arsenal of gear for a long time, I definitely want to make sure it's worth it. And so sometimes if it's not available at Guitar Center, I'll buy it online. And if I don't think it's going to be what I need it to be in my ongoing collection of MIDI controllers for good uses, then I'll just return it. And normally we have a pretty good return policy. Most places online do a 14 to 30 day return policy. But going forward, if tariffs make things a lot more expensive, it's just going to be harder to get your hands on some of these things because they're just going to be more expensive. But B, people might start to restrict their return policy. Amazon's pretty nice with theirs. They get 30 days. You can open it up, you can use it. But in certain locations in the US where maybe it's just harder to ship some of these things, and again, because some of these things are going up in price, they may not have, one, a lot of these things in their inventory to send out, and two, they might become stricter with their return policy and just saying, hey, you bought it, you've had it for 14 out of 30 days, you don't have a valid reason, we're going to decline the return, and you're going to have to just keep it. Now, I think Amazon's a pretty, not the best company in the world, but their return policy is rather generous. So hopefully they keep that even when some of these tariffs are being placed on musical equipment. People are still able to get their controllers and be able to test them out, and continue to make music. Now, for mom and pop shops, they're going to be kind of the ones that are just stuck in the middle because they don't really have a way of absorbing the cost. Most of these shops are already operating on a very thin budget, and to have to put an additional 20-25% cost on top of it and then say we don't even get that money, that's just something like the government collects. It's like, it sucks for them, and people that come to their shops are probably local people that have a strong passion for music or trying to get into music and they have a good relationship with them, and having to pay so much more is not, going to be the best. So hopefully those shops can continue to be supported by locals and they can find new ways to be able to earn that money so they don't close. Because in smaller communities like where I grew up, they're kind of the pillar of the music community because it's the only place you can physically go in and try out a guitar or a guitar pedal or a keyboard or a drum set or things like that. So if you do have a small mom and pop shop in your neighborhood, see if you can support them in some sort of way, especially with the upcoming tariffs on keyboards and MIDI controllers and other musical instruments like that. But it's also just going to make people in general harder to want to get into the music scene, because if you have to pay 25% more on top of everything, then it's going to be tough to just say, yeah, I can invest in that. I can take time from my day to put into that. But to say, hey, it's 25% harder now or 25% more expensive, definitely tougher. So how are we going to be able to maybe combat these rising prices and be able to save money on what we need to be able to make music or to lower the entry to get into music? Well, first thing you could do is just buy used gear. Reverb.com, even Guitar Center, they have some really good selections of gear where you can get them used. Some of it's already with shops that are, kind of considered local, but they sell online. Some of it's from individuals, but I've bought and sold things on Reverb and have had pretty good success. There's also, of course, the good old-fashioned eBay. eBay is a bidding war, so I don't feel like it always turns into the best situation. It's mostly there now, I feel like, for collectors and people that want something like rare, unique, but it is a good option. But the option that I think has worked out the best, honestly, for me, is Facebook Marketplace, because I can go on there, type in MIDI controller, and while it may seem like it's just basic equipment, for people that are just getting into music or want something that's not complex and they don't want to spend a ton of money, the basic equipment you could get on Facebook Marketplace, it's a pretty good deal. I've gotten a keyboard from there before, I've gotten a drum pad from there before, and I paid about like 50% of the original cost, which is pretty good because I would expect to be spending probably around 70 to 80% of the original cost on the keyboard and the drum pad that I bought, but I got it for close to 50%. Most of the time, people on like Facebook Marketplace, they're not trying to make a ton of money. They're just like, hey, I need to get rid of this stuff. I'm moving or I don't use it. I'm just trying to make some quick money to pay a bill or whatever it is. And you can get a pretty good deal there. So check out Facebook Marketplace. You're probably going to find some cool deals there. Now, hardware probably is going to become more expensive, but so far I haven't seen anything around software. So if you have some good hardware, fear not, software is not going to get more expensive from what we've seen. So you can still invest in plugins and things like that and know that it's not going to cost you more. However, I wouldn't be surprised if certain hardware companies that also make software try to offset the price of their hardware. Instead of saying we're going to raise our hardware prices, they kind of just raise those a little bit and then they raise the software a little bit too. But there's not a ton of hardware companies like MIDI keyboards and things like that that have a really strong software presence. The only one I can really think of is Artura. But I don't know if Artura is manufactured in China, but that is one thing that they could try to do. Instead of raising the price of the hardware, they could just say, we're going to raise the price of the hardware a little bit and then raise the price of the software a little bit to try and spread out where they're kind of having to increase their prices to make up for the tariffs. But you can also just try and find local people that are making software. There's some plugins you can buy, probably from up-and-coming coders and producers, to try different things and see how that sparks your creativity as well. Because obviously there's not going to be any tariffs or anything like that I can tell on software. But if you also just want to try and keep that money to people that you know, or people that are going to definitely maybe use that money to keep their career going, you could try finding out if there's some local people or indie music producers that are trying to dive into the plugin field and see if they have something there that might do what you're looking for. But overall, I think tariffs, they are going to change, how we look at hardware, especially if it's going to cost, $30 to $50 more for an entry-level keyboard. So manufacturers may have to start saying, if we want to sell a keyboard, we got to make sure there's tons of features to attract people, because a kind of basic upgrade from the Mark III to Mark IV of some of the Novation keyboards or launch pads, there are good improvements, but only enough to say, oh yeah, I should upgrade maybe like later down the road. But if they need that money now, they might have to say, hey, whatever was in like the 6, because we're on 4 right now, we should start putting stuff in the 6 and the 5 to add so much value to it, so that people will say, this is 160, 180, but it was just going to be like 120. It has enough features in it that I think I'm going to like it. I think when you go in and get it, it's worth that price. So it does add a lot of pressure, not only on consumers and also on manufacturers, to try and have that value be there, but also like the buying power to say, I want to buy that, is so much more valuable now because it just costs so much more. And there's not like, it's not the manufacturer and it's not the consumers that are doing this. So it is pretty frustrating to say, we want to keep trying to do the same thing we're doing and make music and be able to get new hardware that will help us. But now it just sucks that the barrier, the cost is just a bit higher. So I hope in the coming months we're able to see some changes with what has been projected. But as we see things increase in price, these are a couple of options that you can look into to try and save some money where you can, if you're looking to get some new hardware and some new software. But what do you guys think? Do you think the tariffs are really going to impact the hardware and the manufacturing community and the music industry? Do you think it's going to impact the shops where you can see this gear in person and try it out? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Peace.